Braun is back in the kitchen. If you're not familiar with Braun, they are a German company. They started just after World War I. And the idea with all of Braun's design is to strip away all of the unnecessary function and really think about what is the purpose of this object and really focus on all of the elements making this object be the best thing that it can be. So today we're going to be taking a look at the Immersion Blender, the Blender, and a coffee maker. Really, I am most curious about the coffee maker. I'm a coffee guy, and the original coffee maker that they introduced in the 1950s was something to behold. I am certainly not familiar with every single Braun appliance, but I do feel like there is normally a universality to their products where they don't have to, for instance, change the language for every single market they're selling to. But at least the buttons here are really straightforward. Brew, auto on, auto off, clock, set, clean. Now that is really nice. There is a sort of a staircase of measurements for how much water you've poured in. As you pour the water in, you are going to be able to have a really clear sense of how much water is in there. And on the water filter, which is also quite nice, there's a little slider so you can presumably indicate which month you put the water filter in last so that you know when to change it. Braun made some beautiful blenders in its day, in its heyday, I should say. The first thing I see is this huge, ugly warning label right here. And I say, safety be damned. There is no reason that they couldn't have put this somewhere else, anywhere but right out front. That screams to me something that I don't want to leave out on the counter. So it does feel solid as it lifts, and you can hear that a connection is being made with the gears, although it doesn't lock into place. I was expecting sort of a twist lock function. So this is a nice little touch. Right inside of the lid is a little measuring cup. The buttons here feel fine. They don't feel better or worse than any other blender functions. There's pulse, stir, chop, mix, puree, liquefy. It feels pretty good. I mean, it's made out of plastic, so if you've ever used a blender that's made out of plastic before, yeah, it feels mostly like that. In terms of the visual aesthetic, it looks fine. Honestly, I don't think it looks any better than most other blenders on the market, and it certainly does not look as good or feel as good as a Vitamix, but that's also a lot more money, so in part you're getting what you pay for. The biggest problem I have is with this huge warning on the front. Finally, the Immersion Blender, and I can't say for sure whether Braun actually ever put an Immersion Blender on the market before. Oh, that's the worst sound in the world. I hate the sound of scraping styrofoam. It makes my skin crawl. There are so many parts to this thing. If you own this thing for a year, there's no way you're going to have every part of it still intact. Everything that I have touched so far out of these new Braun products, this hand blender, it feels the most solid. In terms of the aesthetics, I like the green here because it indicates action. I look at this whole thing and I think, okay, what are the parts I'm supposed to touch or the parts I'm not supposed to touch? And there is a button outlined in green begging me to squeeze it. So I like that. I felt like there's some real thought put into this. Also, the ergonomics of this are just perfect. I feel like they studied the Xbox controller or something. There's a satisfying click when you put that into place. Also, I like the jagged shape to this because it makes it clear exactly how it's supposed to meet its brother. As for the rest of this stuff, there are just so many parts, you're probably going to lose it. I like that some of them are color-coded, but you're absolutely going to need the instruction book for this. I don't hold that against it. I just think it's a lot to get your head around. As appliances, everything we've seen so far is fine. They're pretty good. And if you're looking for an alternative to your Hamilton Beaches on the entry level, or maybe even the mid-price stuff like Cuisinart, these make a compelling alternative. They have a slightly different design language. They have all of the same functions, and they're similar price points. But if we're holding them up against the classic, groundbreaking Braun appliances of the past, no, they're not hitting that aesthetic. But times have changed. We're living in the golden age of coffee. You can find tons of beautiful coffee makers at every price point. The blender landscape has changed. There are Vitamixes and things like that that cost many multiples that are beautiful and a higher quality. I think these are fine, reasonably priced alternatives.